Hello and welcome to everybody to this IGO Roundtable, our first quarterly roundtable of the year. Welcome to everybody. Lovely to see you all joining. I'm going to just let a minute go by while everybody comes in because we have a waiting room and people are coming in as we speak. So just bear with us for literally 1 minute while we let everybody join that is there, and then we'll kickstart this wonderful IGO roundtable that's going to be very exciting today. Okay, I think our waiting room has emptied out. I'm sure other people will join as well, but let's move ahead on time, more or less. So again, welcome to the IGO Roundtable, the first of 2024. And today is quite interesting because we are going to have a big focus on textiles. We don't normally have a particular sectoral focus in these roundtables, but today we do. And we have two particular presentations that I hope and I believe will be very interesting for all of you. We have one from the South African Cleaner Production Center, which is where Lee Reuters is going to talk about a new textile project that is going to be rolled out in South Africa as part of an overall global project. And we have Ramesh De Silva representing a company who will be talking about his experience working in the private sector, dealing with the repair and recycling of garments. So we have two quite interesting presentations, and then we have hopefully also a very nice discussion planned with you. We're looking forward to getting all of your questions for the speakers, but also in general about, of course, resource efficiency, but today in particular, the textile sector. Now, before we move to Lee and Ramesh, what I would like to do is give you a quick update from GGKP side, or the IGO initiative, because as has been communicated in the previous roundtables last year, GGKP is now focusing a lot on circular economy with the support of EU funding, and we are moving rapidly ahead on this front. And there's two key things that we're undertaking at the moment to get this circular economy focus underway. And that is mapping all the important global, regional, and national circular economy initiatives and projects that are out there. Now, that's a big exercise, and it won't happen overnight, but we've already made a start on this. And the idea is to, at the beginning, within the next month or so, to actually, on the basis of this mapping, to start to develop a community of representatives from each of the initiatives that we map, so that we create a group or a community of practice between all of these initiatives for a personal exchange of experience on circular economy. But we will also be putting in place a digital infrastructure to automatically share knowledge resources between all of the different initiatives, so between knowledge hubs. So going forward, this mapping is all about creating a community of people, but also creating an infrastructure for automated exchange of knowledge resources. Now, to support that, to support the automated side of knowledge exchange, we are developing a common circular economy knowledge taxonomy, because we always have to be able to speak the same language. If we share things automatically, we all have to have a kind of a similar way of classifying stuff. And we are doing this with Switch Asia, which some of you, many of you probably know, is also an EU-funded project on circular economy topics in Asia. And we'll be working with them during Q2 of this year to develop this kind of common circular economy knowledge taxonomy, obviously working with a number of different circular economy initiatives. So all of this is underway at the moment. And as part of that, we would like to give you a quick overview from the first part of this circular economy initiative mapping. For that, I have my colleague Lee with us. And just to explain, we have been obviously doing a desktop-based research on all the work that's been done on circular economy. And we're only scratching the surface for the moment. And as part of that, when we kind of found a particular initiative, we sent them a short survey to understand a bit better how they focus on circular economy and activities. And Cohen has been compiling the information from that first survey. Again, it's a starting point. And I think it's interesting for everybody to see what we have found out so far about the different initiatives that we have been researching and with whom we'll be developing a community within the next 1 or 2 months. So I will hand over to Cohen to give a quick overview of the results of this survey. We'll be happy to get your questions. We'll be delighted for you to say, I have an initiative that you haven't included, and please include me. So I'll let Cohen go ahead, and then hopefully we'll get lots of questions and also be able to move on to our 2 presenters. So Cohen, over to you.
Thank you, Hannes. Hello, everyone. My name is Cohen, and it's a great pleasure to meet you and welcome you all to the IGO Community Roundtable. I, along with Hannes, am working with the Green Industry Platform, the IGO tool, like you all know, but also the recently kickstarted, the EU-funded project called Accelerating the Global Transition to a Green and Circular Economy. But in short, we will refer to this as the Circular Economy Project. So in the slides, as Hannes briefly previewed you, I will be sharing the results of the first round of survey that we have conducted within the remit of this Circular Economy project. So I'll just briefly again highlight on why we ran the survey and the big question that we are aiming to address through this project and the survey. And I will also introduce you to the questions and the detailed information that we shared from the survey and also what makes the survey unique. And we'll delve into analysis, some of the trends observed from the responses we collected in this survey. And lastly, some reflections and the way forward for the survey and the project overall. So context, why did we run the survey? So again, this survey takes place within the context of the EU-funded Circular Economy project. And in this project, the main question that we are aiming to ask is, who are the circular economy enablers out there? And not just any enablers, but particularly the project level enablers. And this is because we all know from our experience that there are hundreds of circular economy projects, initiatives, activities happening all across the world. And the reality is that we rarely know about what each other is doing. So there's been lack of knowledge exchange and hence a lack of collaboration that we have noticed. Therefore, we have started this initial research, what we can call a piloting stage, and we have been looking for some activities-based information. And from this information and ongoing activities, we have set up and will be expanding a database of initiatives and also mapping the information that we collected, such as what are their activities, what sectoral thematic focus they have, who are the target audience, etc. And eventually we'll be strengthening the database also with some of the UNEP-focused, UNEP-led initiatives as well. And overall, I'm sure because this is called the IGO Community Roundtable, we all know that the IGO community is a space dedicated for SMEs. And now we're moving on to this survey and sort of the project level initiatives collection. We'll be creating and launching a community of practice dedicated to the initiatives. And lastly, we will also be expanding that, building on the basis to stakeholders across an entire value chain. So let's move on to the survey. What was surveyed? Firstly, because the main information that we are aiming to collect is initiatives, we've asked organizations who responded that what are their main initiatives, projects they're working on in terms of circular economy. And interestingly, we've also included this graphic of how we currently view as the 8 different stages, key stages of a circular economy, starting from raw materials extraction, all the way to residual waste management and recycling. We've also asked who their target audience is, split into 4 main categories: government, industry, financial institutions, and civil society. and we've also collected if there's any other target audience. Similarly, what type of activities they're conducting, so research/knowledge generation, training, technical assistance, financing, awareness building, and any other activities. And apart from these information that we have provided, sort of the multiple choices, so that there is an ease of answering from the respondents, we have also collected their country/regional focus, as well as thematic and sectoral focus. And the composition of respondents are interesting. So in total, we have 7 different types of organizations that we have surveyed, largely international organizations, NGOs, governments, research and academia, community and civil society, business association, and company in the private sector. And from this first survey that we have conducted between December 2023 and January 2024, we have collected 84 responses. And for the ease of analysis and also to generate some interesting comparison, we have also, again, roughly split them into the private sector and the public sector. And as you can see, we have collected, well, we have received way more responses from the public sector, comprised of IOs, NGOs, and governments, and followed by the private sector. And while we have also collected a small amount of responses from the other sectors, including the civil society and academia, hopefully we can generate more detailed analysis of those respondents and organizations in the coming future. So let's go into the result. Result number 1. What type of circular economy stages are organizations engaged in? And as you can see, overall, recycling was the highest area of circular economy that we saw that people responded they are engaged in, followed by consumption and use, and design, which recorded similar number in response. And some of the interesting facts that we have observed that's not quite shown in this pie chart is that among so 100% of the respondents who replied that they are engaged in distribution responded that they work in production, but not quite vice versa, as well as almost 100% of the respondents who work in managing the residual waste responded that they also work in recycling. And this is an interesting observation considering the nature of residual waste management, which is basically managing and taking care of the materials that cannot be recycled and will eventually be discarded or managed otherwise. And result number 2. So this is basically the same result as before, but split between the public and private sectors. And as you can see from the public sector, we also have a very visibly high recorded response in the recycling, followed by consumption and use and materials processing. From the private sector, we have relatively recorded similar amounts of responses across all stages of circular economy. However, we could still see that there is a high engagement in recycling, design, and production. And in contrast, we can see that the raw materials extraction and also residual waste from the private sector are the areas in a circular economy that we haven't quite observed much engagement from. And just to throw in as a caveat, obviously these results are not exhaustive. This is based on, again, the 84 responses that we collected from the first round of survey. However, hopefully it could also be sort of serve you as a point of reflection, comparison compared to your own experiences. The next result is the target audience. And again, we have split this results into the public versus private sector for an interesting comparative analysis. From the public sector, we have the 2 highest targeted audience group, which are government and industry. And from the private sector, we have industry target audience as the highest recorded group, followed by government. However, there was a big gap between the industry and government groups. And in contrast, we can see that the financial institutions are actually one of the groups that are least targeted. And from the other responses that we have recorded, some of the other audience groups have included trade unions, stakeholders, other stakeholders across an entire value chain, such as recyclers, education institutions, research institutions, small businesses, non-for-profits, and the list goes on. The next result is what type of activities and services do they provide? And from this, we have, again, the result is split into the private versus public sector. And from the public sector, we can see that technical assistance is recorded the highest, followed by training and research and knowledge generation. From the private sector, we have a lot of is recorded in awareness building and research and knowledge generation. And across both sectors, we can see that awareness building and research knowledge generation are equally highly engaged in across the both sectors. And interestingly, followed by the previous results, it's interesting to see that financing is a type of activity that's least targeted by both sectors. And this aligns with the target audience result, where both sectors target least amount of financial institutions as their target audience. So from this very brief surface level analysis, but hopefully we're aiming to develop from, the key findings are, to recap, recycling the highest engaged sector stage across the circular economy structure. Government and industry audience are the two most popular targeted audience group, whereas financial institutions are the least. Similarly, financing services are the least provided services. And in terms of the activities, research and knowledge generation and awareness building are the frequently targeted activities by the both public and private sectors. And some of the responses that are not recorded by these multiple choice questions, the regional and country focus was interesting. We recorded a wide range of country and regional focuses covering all over Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Eastern Europe, and also generally the EU countries. Some of interesting thematic and sectoral focuses included SMEs and manufacturing, but also very specific sectors such as textile, construction and built environment, waste management, and agriculture. And we have also collected some of the other information, more of the programmatic information, let's say. And we have asked who are the finance institutions. And while we didn't generate any solid observation we can share, we did actually observe a lot of EU-funded projects, including the Horizon projects. So from here, reflections and steps forward. So from said in the beginning, while we are targeting to collect more initiatives-based organization, this analysis is based on organizations because the respondents were mainly from the organizations, and they have responded from the perspective of their organizations rather than specific initiatives. Therefore, our plan is to gradually progress towards more of the initiatives-focused information and actually collect what specific projects, initiatives specifically are out there. And this could be multiple projects and initiatives coming from the same organization, which is pretty interesting to always see. And we're also planning to expand collection of specific global, regional, and national level circular economy initiatives. And hopefully, based on what we've collected in the first round of survey, we can provide more tightened / detailed definitions of different circular economy stages / target audience groups and other information. And for example, this is because, let's say from residual waste management, there can be multiple activities within that stage, from incineration or different waste management practices. So this is where we're also headed to. And also it would be interesting to generate more qualitative insights into each circular economy stage, like I just mentioned, and some case studies. And so based on these collection of activities, in the second quarter of 2024, we are planning to create and launch a community of practice dedicated to circular economy initiatives. And hopefully using our famous Green Forum as the main platform, we can facilitate this community of practice, as well as more focused smaller groups and targeted discussions across the different areas of interest. So this was a very brief summary of the surveys, first round of survey of initiatives. And I will hand back to Hannes so he can provide you more explanations and plans in terms of the project.
Thank you very much, Cohen. I'm going to suggest if anybody has burning question, they can obviously raise it now, either in the chat or by raising their hand. Otherwise, we will have time for plenty of discussion towards the end of this roundtable. So if you have something, raise your hand, drop it into the chat. Otherwise, we can obviously expand on this in the discussion. While I wait to see if there is a question, one thing to mention is why we're trying to collect all of this information. It's not just to create this community of practice, but it's really to create eventually an online interface for anybody to use freely to explore all of the different circular economy activities happening around the world, being delivered by different organizations. Again, all nonprofit, so it's not talking about a company and its activities, but all the kind of, let's say, development-focused initiatives. And this will be the ultimate ambition. The online interface will not exist before the end of this year for sure, but that's where we're putting a lot of work into collecting the information and, most importantly, making the direct connection to the initiatives, because you can do surveys, you can do mapping, you don't collect the information on what they're doing really in full detail without talking to them. So that's also a very important aspect of the community we're going to develop as well. So it is very much a starting point, and as the year progresses, you'll hear a lot more about this circular economy initiative mapping. And if you have an initiative or are involved in an initiative and you'd like to make sure that we take it into account and you would like to be part of this future community, do let us know. We will make sure to include it and have you as part of that community from Q2 onwards. Okay, so what I would then suggest is that we move on to the textiles aspect of all of this, because of course it's a very interesting and important sector. And with that, I will pass to Lee. Lee, would you like to take the floor and give an intro to your textile project, please?
Thank you, Hannes. I will let me just get my slides on. But good afternoon to everyone. As Hannes mentioned, my name is Lee. I'm from the National Cleaning Production Center of South Africa, and I'm responsible for our programs on eco-industrial parks, industrial development, as well as circular economy. And so today I'll share with you some of the information on a project that we've recently launched and that was started in South Africa with in partnership with UNIDO. So Hannes, I just want to check if you can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
All right, let me just all right, I just need to
you just need to go to your display settings and change the screen. Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, is this perfect? Right. So as I mentioned, we have this project called Promoting Circular Economy in the Textile and Garment Sector. This is a project that covers South Africa, Lesotho, and Madagascar. The project manager who's working on this is Andre Page. He's one of our colleagues that's been working in the sector for quite a number of years. And so I'm basically sharing some of the information that of the project, and we've got this dedicated project manager that deals with this. Maybe just to give some more context in terms of the textile sector, and I'll go to it shortly. A few slides that will also just indicate what the background and the activities has been. But ultimately, the textile and garment sector is quite an important sector within our national economy. And of course, it's one of the priority sectors spanning across a number of provinces in South Africa, and also receiving quite a lot of support over a number of years due to a significant decline, or quite a impactful decline in the sector that started somewhat 10-15 years ago. So as a National Cleaner Production Center, we've supported the sector, of course, quite extensively over the past 18 years in terms of resource optimization, building capacity to continue resource efficiency. And what we've also seen in South Africa, we've also had from a national government perspective a master plan that's been developed to support the clothing, textile, even footwear sector. So within that master plan, there's this value chain approach that the master plan takes to look at the clothing and textile industry. We've, of course, as I mentioned, this initiative was developed by UNIDO to promote circularity within the textile and garment sector, and of course with that value chain approach. And so the aim and objective of this project has been looking at preventing waste from entering the waste streams, textile, of course, textile waste, different chemicals that comes from the processes of the textile sector, and then creating alignment with the GGKP focal area for chemicals and waste. So this is the overarching aims of the project. Now, before the project was launched and started, we worked with UNIDO on the project preparation grant phase, which looked at developing a number of reports to inform the project framework. And so the NCPC, with a number of experts within the sector, looked at developing a number of reports looking at the textile and garment waste. We looked at the various technology, the best attributable technology in terms of RECP options. We looked at the environmental and social management plans, and we engaged with a number of companies, with leading one of the big or a number of the big companies in South Africa that generates and that manufactures textiles, and did a number of different reports, and all of this information formed part of the project and the preparation of the project. In terms of waste management, there was an aim to map out all of the waste in the textile value chain. As I mentioned, we engaged with a number of stakeholders from raw material up until end of life, and we looked at predominantly in the Western Cape and in KwaZulu-Natal provinces, where the textile industry is predominantly located. Worked with a number of companies there. Now, in terms of the project implementation, the UNIDO was designated by GGKP, Global Environment Facility, as the implementing agency, and this project is funded by GGKP. The NCPC South Africa is the national executing entity. And of course, within South Africa, to manage the overall project activities. There's also a number of other partners that will be working with us on the project. So we've got quite a number of leading entities in South Africa that will be supporting this project. The project launched officially in November last year. And so our project team is currently in the process of starting with the first activities and of the components of the project. So this is quite a big group of entities and organizations that will support the implementation of this project. In terms of the project components, project will be running over a period of 5 years. Four key components or main components looks at regulatory and institutional capacity for promoting circular economy in the sector, recyclability and textile and garment waste, particularly looking at persistent organic pollutants, as well as introducing circularity for unintended persistent organic pollutants and emission reductions. Knowledge management for scaling up the project is quite an important part of the project, and the reason for that is this project also aligns quite well with a number of other existing projects within the textile sector, or that supports the textile sector, of which the NCPC is also involved in, particularly looking at the UN, the UNEP Intex project that's also currently, coming to a close now, but has been operating or running for about 3 years. And in that particular project, supporting the textile sector with adopting eco-innovation business models, as well as with life cycle and or product environmental footprint expertise and capacity building. And then we're also working closely with our national customs in terms of recycling confiscated textiles and garments that would usually be either incinerated, and now we're looking at disposing or recycling and reusing and repurposing that waste as well. In terms of project activities for year 1, which is basically 2024, there'll be a number of activities. These will look at the legal and institutional framework for life cycle management, establishing the institutional or the project, the different project committees and project structures, as well as looking at chemical inventories, developing of standard operating procedures, and starting with training capacity building in this project. Also looking ahead to this year, and we've tried to really fast track or start working quite fast on some of the activities, but of course partnering, cooperating, or partnerships and cooperation mechanism for supply chain management. This is an important activity. Looking at developing and implementing national capacity and awareness programs to increase textile sector and policymakers to control the different pollutants. So this is quite an important aspect for the sector, and our Department of environment is of course a key partner and a key stakeholder in this, and then developing regional and global knowledge exchange tools and management tools for global users. And then of course gender and social action plan is another big part of the focus for year one, specifically in how it affects female workers within the different areas or across the country. So these are some of the activities for the year. Yeah, I think that's where I want to wrap it up. So as I mentioned, we have quite a number of different projects that's running concurrently with this project, and of the one project that's coming to an end now, that will also look at scaling up or continuing. But we, out of all of these projects, what we've seen, and of course linked with the national master plan on textiles, clothing, textiles, leather, and footwear, we've now looked at using these projects as a way to not just support the industry or the textile sector, but also to develop certain capacity that's not been in the sector for a long time, to support competitiveness or to enhance competitiveness, but of course to have a impact on the resource use and on the challenges of pollutions and chemicals and waste within the sector. So we do also have interesting connection to industrial spaces, industrial parks, as we've seen that a number of the textile companies are either located in industrial parks or close to industrial spaces, or industrial spaces where they are operating. So there's another link that we were able to make to our eco-industrial parks program, and providing additional support to the project. Thank you, Hannes.
Thank you very much, Lee. And it sounds like it's going to be quite a comprehensive project going forward. And very interestingly, I noticed you using or referring a lot to waste throughout your presentation, which is a wonderful segue to our next presenter, Ramesh. Now, Ramesh, before you do your presentation, I'm just going to see very quickly if anybody has a first question that they'd like to pose to Lee about the project, about the work in South Africa. So if anybody wants to quickly ask Lee already a question, we might take the opportunity now while it's still fresh in our memory. So anybody want to raise their hand at this stage for Lee? I'm just looking carefully at the list.
Hi, I'm trying to raise the hand, but I cannot see the option though.
No worries.
I'm so sorry, I'm just...
Go ahead, Ruben, it's perfect.
All right, cool, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Ruben Betsi. I'm calling from Albania with work with GSZ. We're thinking to exploit a little bit the potential of the textile and garment industry within the circular economy spectrum. And I was wondering, is it in South Africa? Is it more related to post-consumer textile, or is it more post-industrial one? If that makes sense, because here in Albania, we do a lot of European companies, they outsource part of their operational chain in Albania, mainly due to cheap labor. And we're thinking a target to reach is mainly post-industrial waste and not post-consumer waste. So I'm just thinking out loud, just if it is the same case in South Africa as well.
Thanks, Ruben. Yeah, I think we've got a little bit of both. And post-industrial is definitely a challenge. What we found is that a lot of the processes, because of the downturn in the sector, a lot of processes have not really evolved that much in terms of adopting new resource efficient production methods or approaches or machinery. So there's definitely, that's the one element. Now we're also getting more involved in the post-consumer. So there's quite a big movement in terms of addressing the post-consumer, component. And we've now looked particularly at how that can be addressed through repurposing programs. We've seen a few companies, some of the leading companies that have now also adopted a approach to repair garments for their customers, that will of course improve or increase the life cycle of those products. So we've got a combination of both of those aspects.
You're on mute, Ruben, in case you're answering.
Sorry, cheers. No, thank you. And the program is mainly related on a regulatory framework rather than on an actual SME perspective, and also like innovative ideas that fall within the circular economy spectrum.
Excuse me, just repeat that.
Yeah, is the program that for the next year, is it going to be mainly related on a regulatory aspect, or is it also going to be on an approach for innovative solutions towards the circular economy solutions in the textile and garment industry, in both sectors in this case?
Not in the first year, towards the
Okay.
third year of the project. Second and third year, we'll be looking at solutions, innovative solutions for the SMEs.
Okay. No, thank you. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you.
Right.
Ruben, may I just quickly check? You mentioned GIZ. Are you part of a GIZ program in Albania, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. We are the circular economy program for GIZ in Albania. Yeah.
So we should make a note of you for our initiative mapping if we haven't already included you. We've already included a lot of GIZ programs. So do let us know if you want to be part of our future community around this, because we do a lot of GIZ programs in this as well.
Sure. Please do. Count me in. It's good.
Thank you very much. Okay, unless somebody else wants to quickly jump in with another question, we will have still time at the end for a lot of discussion. But if anybody wants to throw up their hand still for a question to Lee, now's a chance. I'm looking at our list. If not, then I would say let's go to Ramesh, because Ramesh has all the answers that Lee is posing about managing waste, and he might make Lee's life a lot easier going forward with all of his ideas and solutions that he's been working on very diligently for the last number of years. Ramesh, over to you, please.
Thank you, Hans. Let me share my screen. Do you see it now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, wherever you are. So my name is Ramesh. The company that I represent is Compreli, and what we do is we provide a service, provide a repair service to garment factories. And just to give a brief intro about myself, for the last 30 years, I've been in apparel, 10 years working in the US as a buyer, and then the rest of it in Asia working for garment factories. And my partner is also from the same industry, has been in manufacturing side for the last 25 years. So we both have quite a lot of experience in textile and apparel manufacturing. When we talk about waste, I think the most of the discussions move towards post-consumer fashion waste, right? That's the waste that you find at the end of life, what you find in the Western world. And there is some sort of data around it. So, for example, they say globally there's one truck load of clothes that are burned or landfilled every second. And based on some of the research that I did, I found out that in Europe, there's textile waste of 4,700 kilotons annually. And in UK, it's about 1,000 kilotons. But when it comes to pre-consumer fashion, that's even what Ruben was mentioning. What happens before the garments are shipped out in the manufacturing stage, there's not much data around it, right? And based on some of the estimates, looking at, I'm based in Sri Lanka, so looking at the numbers that we generate here, I sort of came up with this figure. Basically, if EU is importing $200 billion, 200 billion euros worth of garments, based on that, it equals to about 2,200 kilotons of waste. So what I'm trying to say is, I could be little here or there, but for every kilo of garments or textile that you waste in EU, there's about a half a kilo that we waste manufacturing it. And I don't think that figure has, been, heard many times, right? And also, there was some research that I came across that was done by OCAD University in Canada, where they came up with this figure where they say, on average, 35% of all materials in the supply chain end up as waste before a garment or product reaches the customer. And Reverse Resources, a company out of Netherlands, and they did a waste mapping about 1 or 2 years ago. They did that mapping across 1,200 factories in 20 countries. And they came up with a figure that says 47% of all fiber entering the fashion value chain becomes waste. 47%, that's huge. So basically, for if H&M places an order, let's say they want to order 100 pieces of a style, that means we have to input 147%. So there is 47% wastage within the production process. And if you look at the industry, 71% of the emissions happen before the garments are shipped out. And I think out of the 71, 90% of that emission happens before the garments are, the textile is cut and made it into garments. So in the textile stage and before that, 90% of that 71% emissions happens there. So any product that doesn't, doesn't get to be worn or doesn't get consumed, and if it has to be discarded after, using so much of natural resources, it's a calamity, it's a tragedy, right? And if you take this 47% breakdown, the breakdown of it, it's there's something called roll ends. That's a picture that you see on your right side corner up on the top. So these are 90 inches are longer fabric rolls. So every time you have an order, you cut these garments, and after you cut it, you have these so many rolls of fabric that is being kept aside. Maybe they use it later, but in most cases they actually they have to burn them. Why? Because there are certain brands that have very stringent protection regulations, so they don't let you use that fabric for any other purpose, so you have to send it to an incinerator, right? But in some cases there is actually a secondary market where you sell them. And same with, if you look at the next on the list, it's grage fabric. That's fabric that is before being dyed. So of course, you can use that again and again. Cut pieces, more than 18 inches. Those are very small pieces, what you see that's the middle picture. Again, leftover that is, not turned into a garment, not turned into a finished product, and they are kept aside, and later on they are written off and they are sold into a secondary market, or they are again, sent to incinerator or landfill. Then there are overproduced or defective fabric. There are overproduced or rejected garments. But most of it is the one at the bottom where it's scraps and yarn waste. That is from the spinning process and from the cutting process. So again, for that, there is a secondary market for that. And also you can't do much about it. That waste, you can't stop that. Unless there is new technology. At the moment, we have to deal with that waste. So my focus is mainly on the rejected garments part. So if you look at that percentage is 17.8%. So globally, we sell about 100 billion garments every year, right? So if you take 17.8%, it's 17.8 billion garments. Are we not doing anything about it? They are being manufactured, they are rejected, they are not exported. They are sitting in a country where it's been manufactured and collecting dust, or maybe they're sent to incinerator or landfill, right? It's humongous. It's like almost 20% of what everything that you purchase annually is also, kept aside somewhere in the manufacturing countries. And also, if you take, post-consumer waste, those are worn garments. They have huge color variations, color shadings. There could be a lot of stain marks, etc. But they are worn out, right? But if you take the pre-consumer fashion waste, these are brand new garments with maybe a minor defect. So repairing these garments is so much easier. And if it is 17.8 billion garments a year is rejected because of some sort of a small defect, it's again it's a crisis. So that's where my company comes in. We look at how to fix those rejected garments, and right now we only end up getting 3%. Even though there is a lot more in the process, we are only dealing with 3% of the defective garments that comes for us for repairs. And if you take textile and apparel manufacturing, there are 60 plus different defect types. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are 60 plus, and I will show you some of the very common ones. What you see here on the left side, there are garments with holes. So we have skilled technicians that could reweave that hole so that you can't see it, right? And then we have ways of taking out stains and dye patches. Shading, like for example, this pink T-shirt you see, the collar is of one color and the rest of the body is a different color. We do some things to make it even so that you can't see the difference. And then that we do so many repairs on denim garments, taking out patches, marks, repairing torn garments, etc. But these are the very common ones that we come across. And how we engage with our clients is, we mainly work with some of the biggest manufacturers in Asia and in Africa. So, when the garments go through the production process and they get sewn and they go to an inspection, a quality inspector, and that person would separate the good and the bad garments, and they'll call us and we'll send a team wherever they are in the world, and we'll repair those garments then and there. So we don't have our own factory. We have teams based around the world, and these guys go to these factories and repair those garments then and there. And right now, we are based in Sri Lanka, but we have teams in Kenya, in Pakistan, and Egypt, and Jordan. And if you look at the kind of contribution that we have made and the displacement effect of our circular business model. So since our inception, we have repaired 10 million garments. And if you multiply that by $10 per garment, the export value, that's about 100 million USD we have saved for these manufacturers. And if you look at, if you translate that into the kind of environmental benefits, we have saved about 100,000 metric tons of CO2, so many billion gallons of water, saved electricity and waste. And we also have given jobs to 150. Sorry.
It's all fine on the screen. Don't worry, Ramesh. It looks good.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So basically, we have given jobs to 150 repair specialists, and typically we employ people who don't have higher education, because this is a skill set that we have to train them, and and these are people who have less opportunities, economic opportunities in the world. So we train them and we give them jobs. So we have about 150 of them working for us now, and even going through Koyun's presentation, I was wondering, so much of focus is on recycling, right? But if you take the waste hierarchy, there are so many activities that has more value that needs attention. Like, for example, repair, that is ranked maybe third on the list, right? Because repairing transforms that product at its highest value. So I think a lot more attention has to be given to repair companies and reuse, reselling companies, as much as the attention that they give to recycling companies at the moment. And the main story that I want to share or advocate is that, like in the military, they say never leave a wounded soldier behind. What I want to say is never leave a simple a small yard of fabric behind. Turn everything into a finished product, and so that we can, if there are any defects, we can repair them. Otherwise, we can ship it out. Don't keep small fabric rolls sitting in the factory floor and then discard them later. Turn everything, whatever you bought for that particular order, turn that into a finished product, and make sure it's being consumed. Yeah. So, and there are a lot of benefits for the manufacturer, because those are our clients that we work with. I mean, if you take like a medium scale manufacturer that makes about 1 million pieces per month, that's about 12 million pieces per year. And if their rejection rate is 3%, that's about 360,000 pieces per year. And if by us going and repairing them, if they and after that, if they can export and get $5 for that garment, that's about 1.5 million USD that you save annually. So that's a huge gain for these manufacturers. And there are so many other benefits, like they don't have to, they don't have to reproduce these small quantities to fulfill the order. I mean, they don't have to disrupt their production flow. They don't have to, if they have to remake them, and if they have any delays, they don't have to, they will not get penalized by the brands, and they will not face chargebacks. And also the main thing is, they will not have the burden of having to dispose the waste, because once we repair them, they are good to go. They can be shipped out. The challenges and opportunities that I see, challenges are the lack of support from brands. Even though repairing ranks very high on the waste hierarchy, it's still, repairing is considered like a inconvenient truth. I mean, they talk about repairs for post-consumer fashion waste, but when it comes to pre-consumer, they don't want to go to their customers and say, hey, you're getting this garment, it's a substandard garment, it's been repaired. They can't say that, right? But I think they'll have to, because if they are like the numbers show, if there are 17.8 billion garments that have been rejected, you have to do something about it. You can't, not look the other way. And also, we have problems with, raising funding, because, it's a service industry and we have no assets, we have only people. The opportunities that I see is that, with the new regulations that are coming in EU, the CSDDD and the traceability, we will have more visibility into the waste that is being generated. So I think that will be a good way to flush out everything all the waste that's hidden in the process. And also, the repair percentages right now we deal with 3%, but I think it could go up to about 5 to 15% when these laws kick in, and they have to do something about the waste. Right now they just dispose them, but I think they'll have to start doing something. At that point, I think the demand for repairs will be higher. Yeah, with that, I end my presentation with an African proverb. So if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ramesh. And I have to admit, it's an excellent and very interesting presentation that really zooms in on the particular issue of pre-consumer waste. And I find it very interesting because you've shown how it can successfully be addressed, and we're still only addressing a fraction of it, as you highlight. So I think at this stage, I'd love to hear from everybody else. One, I'm sure there are questions out there that you would like to pose. I can imagine it would be very interesting to pick Ramesh's brain, how hard it was to actually convince the brands to repair their products. But would anybody like to jump in first? Because I prefer not to be the one asking all the questions, but there are lots. So please raise your hand if anybody would like to jump in with a particular question for Ramesh, for Lee, or even just to share your own experience in the textile sector or the issues you've encountered. Now is the wonderful opportunity to do it. while I wait for all the nervous audience to figure out who's going to be the first one to raise their hand, Ramesh, I would like to ask you this particular question about convincing the brands, because there's obviously a lot of brands that have this fear of, we don't want to sell repaired garments and they don't want to sell secondhand garments per se. How complicated was it for you to convince the brands to go down this route? And is there a certain type of brand that will do it? So we're talking maybe more of a national brand that's of a medium level, and it's much more complicated with the international brands that are very image focused and don't want to sell repaired garments. Maybe you could share your experience on that.
Yeah, sure. So basically the brands that has been has approved that process are the small ones, but not the big ones. You know, for them, this is not one of the burning issues that they are facing at the moment. But most of our interactions are not with the brands. We work with the manufacturers, and in some cases, you know, maybe the brands they are not probably even aware of, you know, that their garments are being repaired, and repairing has been happening for the last, you know, 20-30 years, even since mass production of apparel. Repairs has been happening. So I think some of the brands, the big ones, they don't know it's happening at the moment, and now, of course, their focus is elsewhere.
No, it's a fair point. And yet the big brands are probably the biggest culprits because of the quantities they're dealing with, for sure. Lee, actually, I'm going to capitalize a little bit the discussion while I wait for everyone to come up with their questions. In relation to the project you're doing in South Africa, have you already looked at this issue of pre-consumer waste? Now, I know the question was already asked a bit by Ruben, but in terms of policies, in terms of the technical assistance you're planning, have ideas been already floated, or is that actually part of the project to try and design it? And to what extent can you build upon experiences like that from Ramesh to support you?
Yeah, thanks, Hannes. Yeah, you know, we've started looking at that already with some of the policy makers. We hope to go a bit deeper into this with the new project, but under our Intex project, we've started engaging with policymakers to incorporate that into policy, particularly with extended producer responsibility regulations. There's been a number of private sector entities that have also started, you know, giving some ideas and giving inputs into it. So it's very early stage, but we've started moving towards that, and we hope to ramp that up with this new project.
Oh, thank you, Lee. Good to know. And I think the more we can bring in experiences from outside that can help this kind of project will be good. I have to admit, there's also a large, what we call One Textile project that's been led by UNEP, United Nations Environment Programme, that is just kicking off, and it's trying to tie in a lot of the individual textile projects happening around the world. And I know, for example, they're also trying to bring in case studies like this from Ramesh, but also what Lee will be doing in country. So a lot of things happening that I think will be able to benefit from both your work. But we already have a few hands turning up, and I believe, Andre, you had your hands up first. Would you like to pose your question?
Yes, thanks very much. I'm representing Resource Efficient Linen Production Center from Ukraine, and now we are working for EIDA under Youth Environment Program and developing e-learning course on circular economy. And together with international partners, we collected all this, you know, information and cases from all over the world to illustrate approaches and business models of circular economy, and added to this examples also our Ukrainian national examples. And I feel that example from Ramesh is very exciting. And my question, it is present somewhere in public space, so we can like borrow it and incorporate it in our training course to make it an example, because it's very interesting. It's also showing this approach of repair, but also that it is business model based this approach. It's very something new and interesting, and like how smaller businesses can be part of some bigger picture. So my first question, if it is publicly available anywhere, like that we can make a link or mention it in our training course that will be aimed on Ukrainians, government sector and business. And the second question, you mentioned that it is quite hard to find financing for your business because you're not producing, and I feel it too, because, for example, we do consulting to the companies, and to sell them equipment and sell them report, it's very different scene. And but when you speak about troubles with finding funds for your company, do you mean that, for example, for banks, if you don't have fixed assets like premises, workshops, and expensive equipment, they don't borrow you any money?
Yeah, sure, Andrew. Yeah, so to answer your second question first, basically, yes. So, for us to get any loans from where we are in Sri Lanka, it's our interest rates are, off the chart. So it's not very feasible. But otherwise, globally, at the moment, since we don't have many assets, and it's only people with skills, excuse me, it's very hard to find financing. To answer your previous first question, whether how I mean basically it's we are a private company, so the skill is our IP, right? So we are not necessarily looking at ways to train the skill set to others, but what we are willing to do is we are willing to franchise it to other countries, right? So if it's in Ukraine, we'll work with a local partner where we can train with that set in place. We can train locals and then go from there. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Ramesh, and thank you, Andri. Very interesting to see that it could be of interest even from a training perspective as well, just the concept. We have am I correct? Ilmi, is that the correct pronunciation? Apologies.
Yes, very well done. Thank you. So first of all, many thanks for all the great presentation, and then Hannes also thanks for great facilitation of the meeting. Much appreciated. My name is Ilmi, and I'm here representing UNIDO for the first time, so very nice to meet you all. I have actually a comment related to the first presentation on the mapping of the circular economy initiatives and projects. Maybe something interesting to you. So we as UNIDO, we've been also working together with Chatham House on this global stock take of the national roadmaps. So we've been actually looking at the 70 national roadmaps across the world, and also analyzing the different policy actions mentioned in those roadmaps. I know that it's not one-on-one what you are doing, but maybe also when you actually go into the national level, I believe in the next stage of your work, maybe that could be something that you could be also leveraging. And I think maybe for everybody to know, we will be publishing the paper in 3 weeks. And also in addition to that, also publishing the database that Chatham House has been working on online. So if there is any interest to join the session that we are having, it's an online session, all the report or the data that will be available. I think that would be something that we can also collaborate on.
That sounds very interesting, and I'll just nod my head and say, yes, indeed, we would be happy. And I would also suggest, if you have a link for that event, please put it in the chat here and do share it with us. We'll also promote it through our platform for everybody else. And of course, when you have the publication of the database and reports, we'll be happy to share it through GIP as well. So lots of yeses for you in response there. Thank you very much, and very interesting.
If I just add to that really quickly, actually, so from the survey, it was one of the things that we observed was, apart from the activities that we listed, a lot of the organizations have actually came back to us saying, oh, we do a lot of policy and regulatory support. And we weren't quite able to capture that just yet from the first round of survey because we didn't provide that option. But seeing a lot of interest and activities going on, we'd love to move on to surveying or researching more of the policy support aspect, and in which your UNIDO project with Chatham House would be of great interest to us. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for highlighting.
Thank you, Cohen, as well. That was a good point to make. I'm skipping along merrily because we have a few minutes left and I have two hands already on the screen. So Jesse, I believe you would like to jump in as well.
Thank you very much. It's quite a side in the presentations that were made today. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you just broke a little bit. I'm going to ask you to switch off your video. It might make it easier to connection, if that's okay. Yeah.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Oh, great. So I wanted to ask regarding some policies, most especially within the textile sector. I asked this because in some countries, so there are protection policies that are being put up for the textile sector so that the textile sectors within these countries can grow properly. I take Nigeria, for example. There are some policies in place where there is a reduced amount of textile that can come in, either as wholemeal garments or just the normal textile, not cuts into apparel. But looking at the presentations which Ramesh made, it actually raised a lot of policy suggestions, and I want to seek your support in analyzing this situation for me, which I believe if a paper is done in this direction, it will kind of bring light into the post-consumer phase in terms of fashion. So along with the figure that you provided or you presented, Ramesh, it's staggering, 17.9 billion of garments and apparel produced every year. Oh, sorry, going into waste every year. And if those 17.9 billion are targeted to some countries where there is need for it, one, it may, on the global end, fulfill the circular economy part of it. And there is a possibility that it might generate income or start up a new enterprise in developing countries, let's say mid-end or mid-level developing countries. What policies do you think we could propose to policymakers so that they can tap into this global recycling position and make a money out of it by generating some businesses or creating some business line that can either uptake this called non-product output or waste from developing countries or developed countries in this direction. I would be very, very glad if the whole house or Ramesh can propose some kind of policy introduction to policymakers on how this global, I call it opportunity, can be tapped into. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. Yeah, so basically, the first thing would be for you to, have any kind of policy or any kind of, even KPIs around it. First, you need to have the data, right? So that's why even in my presentation, I said, with these new regulations that are coming up with the CSDDD and the traceability, so there'll be more light shed on the kind of waste that's being generated. So, most garment factories, they look at, how much of material they consume. Like, for example, how they have a KPI called cut to ship, right? So how much of fabric they take and they cut, and from that, how much they were able to ship, right? So basically, if they, if they take fabric for 110 pieces, and if they ship only 100 pieces, there's a 10% fallout, right? But I don't think there are any manufacturers out there where they look at a KPI called receive to ship. That is how much of fabric that was purchased for that order and then how much was after cutting, after doing all the production work, how much was shipped out. That will give you a very comprehensive figure of how much of waste that has been generated right throughout the value chain. That is the first thing is the KPI is to see receive to ship of every single order that's been placed. So I'm thinking maybe with this traceability, like the DNA markers that I've been going to put into the fiber to the fabric, it will shed some light into the kind of waste that's been generated. And even, I mean, I'll give you another small example with all this waste. In 2004, Sri Lanka, we had tsunami, right? And we had so many people, children who didn't have clothes. They have lost their houses, they have lost their clothes, everything. And we had all this leftover fabric, we had all these leftover garments in these factories, and we were asking whether we could take them and give it to those people who don't have clothing. And the answer was no, because of brand protection, right? We can't just give it to the local market. I mean, in some cases they do, but in where the brands have very stringent laws protecting the fabric and their designs, you can't just give it to them. You have to burn them. Imagine burning them and not giving to a child who doesn't have clothing, right? It's that bad. So I think in terms of policy, I would think if you can have this receivership as a calculation, if you can calculate for each and every order and present it where some regulations that are coming out like the CSDDD, that would be the answer, I would think. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Jesse, for that. Now, I know I have another hand up from Ruben, and I'm very sorry, Ruben, because we've literally run out of time. We're already over time, but we will be touching base with you after this as well. We've had a lot of very interesting questions, and as usual, we could keep talking forever. And this is why we actually need our community to work so that we can continue these conversations outside of these events. I want to thank Ramesh and Lee for your very, very good presentations and for inspiring the discussion here today. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to stay in touch on those two things. Ramesh, you've already gotten a lot of queries from everybody, and I think they'll be keen to stay in touch with you. Feel free to drop your email address into the chat, Lee as well, in case you'd like people to follow up with you. In the meantime, I will have to call this session to a close, but I would like to remind you that we do have this IGO Roundtable every quarter, and the next quarter we will be talking about many things, but one of the things we'll be talking about is artificial intelligence in the area of knowledge management. Why? Because GGKP is setting off on a big adventure this year to immerse itself in artificial intelligence to help improve its knowledge management systems and infrastructure, not just for GGKP, but for all of our partners as well. So the idea is to give you a glimpse of what we're planning to do, to get your ideas, to get your suggestions, and to make sure you're up to date with what GGKP is planning on artificial intelligence and how it's going to help us make sure that the best knowledge gets to you and that your knowledge gets the best support through our AI-driven knowledge management systems. So please keep that in mind for the next session as an interesting topic. In the meantime, I would like to wish you all a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you very much for having joined today. It is always a pleasure to see you and have you as part of the discussion. And I do hope to see you at the next IGO Roundtable at the end of Q2, i.e. sometime end of June. But of course, we'll be letting you know the exact date closer to it. So thank you all very much and all the very best.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Many thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Thank you.